10 years of continuous war noise ended in an instant. Troy residents woke up today from a forgotten feeling. Complete security. Horizon first time clean. The Greek navy disappeared in the morning mist, leaving behind only a burned camp and the smell of wet ash. People go out the gate, laugh and cry, believing that the nightmare is finally over. But in the middle of this joy on empty sand stands a lonely and strange thing. It's not a beautiful monument, a gloomy angular wooden building, roughly chipped from the boards of dead ships. Trojans see her as a sign of their great victory, but in reality they stare right in the face of their own death, which the enemy carefully packed into a tree. The last day of the great city started with a holiday, but by midnight he will turn into the ancient world's worst nightmare. Imagine that you are in full, absolute darkness. The space around is so narrow that you can't even straighten your back or change your pose. Your knees rest on the back comrade, sitting in front, and someone's heavy breathing burns the back of your head. The air is heavy here, hot and sturdy. It's soaked in a pungent smell, fresh pine resin, which mist the seams, the sour smell of unwashed bodies and cold metal weapons. Next to you, shoulder to shoulder, sit the 30 best warriors of your army. This is the elite special forces of the ancient world. People passed 10 years of war, but now there is a dead silence. In this wooden box can only be heard as blood knocks in the temples, and how someone frantically tries to contain a cough, because one single extra sound, one sneeze, one caress, sword on shield, and it'll be over outside. Behind thick oak boards, drunken screams of enemies are heard, fun music, flute and stomp of dancing feet. French people celebrate. They are sure that the war is over, that the Greeks surrendered and sailed home. They drink wine, hugging and not even suspecting that their death is right here, in the center of their main square, packed in a holiday gift. It's not just a legend. This is a psychological thriller. Imagine the state of people inside. They've been sitting there for hours, maybe even a day. They don't have water, no food, no way to go to the toilet. Inside the structure, heated by the southern sun, the temperature could rise to critical levels. That was real torture. Every one of these 30 people knew that they have almost no chance of surviving the dawn. If the Trojans decide to burn the horse in honor of the gods, they will burn alive. If they decide to throw him off a cliff, they will crash. Their only hope is to wait in the dead of night, when the city falls asleep drunk, and open the gate from inside. But why did anyone even believe this trick? For centuries, we were told that the Greeks built a giant horse as a gift from the goddess Athena to ensure a safe return home. They burned their camp, boarded ships, and disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving on the shore only this strange monument and one single spy named Sinon. His task was the hardest: convince enemies to drag this machina into town, and he played his part genius. He told the Trojans that horse was made so huge on purpose, so he can't be dragged through the gate. Because if he ends up inside Troy walls, then the city will become eternal and impregnable. And then psychology worked. Trojans, blinded by pride and fatigue from the 10-year war, got hooked. They did not just open the gate, they took apart part of the fortress wall to drag the giant inside. People believed it was the will of the gods, said that anyone who will try to destroy the gift of Athena will bring on the wrath of heaven. There was even a creepy story about the priest Achaean, who screamed, "Feardonians, gifts bringing," and threw a spear into the belly of the horse. They say from there was a death moan. But no one paid attention, and soon 2 giant snakes swam out of the sea and strangled the priest with his sons. After such a sign, no one has any doubts left. Horse needs to be led to the city, but let's put the mysticism aside and turn on logic. As adult experienced warlords, 3 could make such a childish mistake. Really, no one suggested just burning the wood on the shore. Historians and engineers studying this question came to a conclusion that behind a beautiful myth hides harsh military technology. There is a very believable version. The word horse is the result of a linguistic error, or if you want, translation difficulties. In ancient texts, siege gun was often called animal names. For example, a turtle is a canopy of shields. What if the Trojan horse wasn't a statue at all? One of the theories says, what was that ram? Huge siege machine, on wheels, suspended log with a metal tip, designed to break the gate. to protect such a car from fire arrows. From the walls, it was covered with raw animal skins. Outwardly, a task such a design on 4 wheels, covered with skins, with long neck and beam, could really resemble a monstrous animal. There is another version marine. Ancient Phoenician ships had a specific nose shape, decorated horse head. Such vessels were called Diapers horse. Perhaps the Troyans let a non-wooden statue into the city, a ship crew, who allegedly switched sides with them, promising to betray the Greeks. That explains why were they adopted by overblowers during the war. Case common. But this crew turned out to be an elite squad of saboteurs. But the most interesting explanation is offered by military engineers. Siege tower. Greeks could build a tall wooden structure. To there, archers ended up on par with the defenders on the walls. This is a siege art classic. Tower sheathed with wet wood and leathers. Not to burn in the chaos of war. For the scared sentinels, this moving machine could look like a giant monster. One way or another, there really were people inside this design. And their task was suicidal. Don't just sit, and at the right time open the gate. And here comes the night. Holiday in 3 fades, the lights go out. Guards on the walls, tired of wine and dancing, loses vigilance. Inside the wooden womb, there is a quiet creak. Hatch opens. 30 shadows descend silently to the ground. They don't run rob houses. They're not looking for gold. They are moving to the gate. In complete silence, they kill the sleeping guards, remove heavy clogs, and light a signal fire on the wall. This is a sign for Navy, who didn't actually swim home, and hid behind the nearest island. Armada is coming back. And at that moment, the fate of the great city was sealed. But to understand, why did you even need such a difficult and insane trick? We need to wind back time. For many years, scientists believed that no Trinity ever existed. And all this is just a fiction of a blind poet. Fast forward to the 19th century. Imagine having a world where the history of ancient Greece is considered just a set of fairy tales. Scientists with glasses and beards sit in prestigious universities in London and Berlin and authoritatively declare, 3 is a myth, it's like Atlantis or Mount Olympus. A beautiful story of gods and heroes, invented by the poet Homer, but in reality she never was. Anyone who tried to look for the ruins of Troy raised ridicule. This was considered as crazy. How to look for Narnia in a tight closet today. But there was one person who didn't care about the opinion of the authorities. His name was Heinrich Schliemann, and its story itself is worthy of a separate film. Schliemann was not a professional historian. He was a businessman millionaire, adventurer, a man with an incredible flair for money and honestly, a little crazy character. Since childhood, he credited Or Adam and Homer. This book was not a collection of poems, a documentary map. He learned ancient Greek, made a fortune on trade, and decided to spend all my money on one crazy dream. Prove that 3 is real. Schliemann took the Homer volume in one hand, shovel in another, and went to Turkey on the hill Gazalik. The locals were herding goats there, and the scientists twisted their finger. Temple Schliemann read the description of the landscape in the book. 2 streams flowed here, one hot, the other cold. There Achilles drove a hectare around the walls, and he started digging. He was digging rough, barbarically destroying entire cultural layers, which today archaeology would disassemble with tassels and decades. He punched the hill through a huge trench, and suddenly the earth began to give away treasures. Shards first, then the remnants of the walls, and then gold. Huge amount of gold. Tiara cups. Thousands of jewelry slam. Was ecstatic. He immediately put an ancient tiara on his wife Sapphire and took a picture, which flew around the world. He stated, "I found the treasure of the king right. I found Troy." The world was shocked. It turned out that the legend is reality. The truth later revealed that the helmet in his hurry decked through Troy. The city he found was much older than the times of the Trojan War. He found Troy second, and the legendary battle took place at 3 and 7. But it's already details. Most importantly, he proved city existed, and the creepiest confirmation of this was found later, when they started studying layers more closely. Archaeologists have discovered a layer, which they named 3-7, and this layer told a scary story. It wasn't just ruins from time to time. The whole city was covered with a thick layer of ash and coal. The stones were split from the monstrous temperature. But the scariest thing was not this. On the streets right on the pavement lay the remains of people, not in graves, not in crypts, and where death overtook them. Some skeletons were found with damage, impact with heavy objects or weapons. Food supplies hidden in panic were found in houses, huge jugs dug into the floor. To survive the siege, everything pointed to that. What a disaster happened here. The city wasn't just abandoned. It was destroyed at one point. Someone broke through the walls. Someone set the houses on fire. Someone staged a sweep, sparing no one. Real archaeology confirmed every word of myth. Great fire, sudden attack, and total destruction. But why was this city so important? Why did 100,000 Greeks abandon there, at home, and 10 years rotted in the trenches on a foreign shore? When we watch Troy movies, we are shown heroic duels. Brad Pitt as Achilles jumps with shield. Swords ring, everything is beautiful and epic, but no one shows what happened between the battles. And the reality is, Greek army didn't come for picnic. They came to hell, which they created for themselves. Imagine having 100,000 men who were stuck on someone else's beach for 10 years. They don't have sewers. They don't have supermarkets. They don't have antibiotics. The logistics of such a war is any general's nightmare. How to feed such a horde? Local villages were destroyed in the first months of the army. Had to go further and further, just to find grain and cattle. Most of the time, great heroes didn't do battles, and banal looting and attempts not to die of hunger. But the worst enemy was not the Trojans. They're unsanitary. In the Iliad, Homer describes a scary moment. God Apollo, angry with the Greeks, coming down from Olympus, and starts 9 days to camp with invisible arrows. Who falls from these arrows dies in agony. Mules and dogs die first. Then people started falling. Mountains of burial pyres burned day and night. Sounds mystically true, but let's translate it into the language of modern medicine. Apollo in Greek mythology is not only the god of art, but also God is a healer, which can both heal and send diseases. His arrows are the perfect metaphor for an epidemic. Imagine camp, where thousands of people live in cramped, drinking water from dubious sources. Where are the toilets? It's just pits in the sand, next to tents. In such conditions, outbreak of plague, typhoid or cholera, it's just a matter of time. The arrows were really invisible. It was viruses and bacteria. Archaeologists find confirmation, mass graves of that period, where bodies are piled up without traditional rites. It says that people were dying so fast that the living just did not have time to bury them. Greeks rotted alive in their camp. Their morale was at zero. Soldiers wanted home. They rioted. Commanders understood, if they don't take the city soon, army will just dissolve or die out. They needed a drastic assault. But there was one problem. Walls 3. They were designed like this, that taking them was physically impossible. Not just stood like that for thousands of years. That was a perfect fortress. The city walls were built with one brilliant engineering feature. They weren't strictly vertical. They were going tilted, tapering to the top. Such an architectural technique is called battery bias. It was making them incredibly stable. But most importantly, it made them a nightmare for attackers. If you try to put a ladder against a slanted wall, the defenders on top don't even need to push her. It's enough for them to drop a heavy stone, and he's hitting a tilted wall. Will bounce right into the crowd below, like a bowling ball, breaking legs and crushing skulls. Taking such a fortress by storm was insane. Legends have spoken that these walls were built by the gods themselves, Poseidon and Apollo, when were punished, Zeus, and sent to serve the mortal king. And what the gods built, mortals cannot destroy. 10 years the Greeks beat their foreheads against these stones. This is where the most, perhaps unexpected, scientific theory, which flips the whole meaning of the Trojan horse. We already talked about rams and towers. On what if the horse is not a car? What if the horse is a metaphor? Remember who Poseidon is. We know him as the god of the seas with a trident, but in the oldest tradition he had another title, Earth Wobble, and his sacred animal was a horse. The Greeks often sacrificed horses to Poseidon, throwing them into the sea or burying them in the ground to calm the earth's trembling. Troy is in one of the most seismically active regions of the world. The North Anatolian Rift passes very close. Earthquakes aren't uncommon there, a regular disaster. Archaeologists who studied the walls 3/6, that same layer, which was the most majestic, found weird cracks and masonry shifts. which are characteristic of a powerful tremor. The walls weren't punched by rams. They cracked and collapsed themselves. And now put the puzzle together. Greeks besieged the city 10 years unsuccessfully. And suddenly, in the middle of the night, a powerful earthquake happens. Earth wobble. Poseidon, whose sacred animal is, force destroys impregnable walls. Masonry areas collapse, opening the aisles to the city. Greeks, seeing this, understand the gods on their side. They break into the city through the gaps and arrange a massacre. Later, when the poets began to compose songs about this victory, they used poetic images. They said the city fell thanks to the horse, meaning earthquake and the wrath of Poseidon. But after 200, 300 and 500 years, metaphor began to be taken literally. The wrath of God turned into a wooden statue. Element turned into engineering trick. Perhaps the Trojan horse is just a memory of that day, when the earth went from under the feet of the Trojans, but even the nature helped the Greeks. Their victory didn't bring them happiness, because the Trojan War wasn't an isolated event. That was the first spark of the world fire. While they were robbing Troy, their own homes were already preparing for destruction. We used to think about the ancient world. How about a set of scattered cities who lived on their own? But 1000 to 100 years BC was surprisingly similar to our modern world. This was the era of the first globalization of Egypt, Het Empire, Meccan, Troy, Babylon. They were all connected by a complex network of trade. No one could survive alone. The Bronze Age was called that because the main metal was bronze. And bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. Copper mined in Cyprus, and the tin was carried thousands of kilometers away from modern Afghanistan or Britain. Imagine that tomorrow oil will disappear all over the world. Transport will stand up, factories will stop, hunger will begin. Same thing happened then, with tin only. The Trojan War was most likely not a war for a woman, a desperate battle for trade routes. Free stood in a strategic place. She controlled the passage from the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. Any ship going for resources should have paid tax. Free Greeks, whose economy was cracking at the seams, just wanted to remove a competitor who strangled them with tolls. But when did they win? There was nothing to celebrate. The system was already crumbling. Right after Opa fall, a wave of destruction swept across the Mediterranean. Huge cities burned down one by one. The Hittite Empire disappeared from the face of the earth. Meccan palaces in Greece turned into ruins. Writing was forgotten for hundreds of years. A great civilization collapsed in that what historians called art. For centuries, who did this? Egyptian frescoes tell about mysterious invaders, whom they called the peoples of the sea. No one still knows exactly who they are. It wasn't a lone army. It was an avalanche. Hungry, desperate people. Refugees with their families, who went sweeping away everything in their path just to find food and land. Perhaps among these peoples of the sea were the Greeks themselves, who came back from under Troy, found their homes destroyed, and turned themselves into pirates and looters. The winners of the Trojan War destroyed the world they lived in. But what happened to those who survived this meat grinder? What happens to the person who cut his throats for 10 years, slept in the mud and saw his friends die of the plague, and then returns to peaceful life? The most famous comeback story is Odyssey. At school, we read it as an adventure novel. Brave Captain Odyssey sailing home, defeating the monsters. But if you take off this story fleur tales, before us will open the darkest medical map Odyssey. This is possibly the first ever detailed description. Severe post-traumatic stress disorder. What we today call PTSR or Vietnamese syndrome. Odyssey can't come home not because what is stopping him from Poseidon? He is hampered by his own broken psyche. For a soldier who spent a third of his life in war, the peaceful reality is becoming unbearable. Look at his stops. It's not just islands. These are the stages of personality breakdown. Remember Lotophagus Island? Locals giving sailors a taste of lotus flower, and those instantly forget about home, about duty, about family. They only want one thing: sit on the shore and eat lotus forever. This is a frightening accurate metaphor for drug addiction. Veterans trying to numb memory pain and nightmares go into oblivion, using any means that just don't feel. And Odyssey has to drag his people to ships by force, tie them up while they scream and cry, begging to leave them in a drug dope, and meeting with Cyclops Palathing, one-eyed giant, who eats people alive in his cave. This is the epitome of dehumanizing the enemy. In war, you stop seeing the enemy as human. He becomes a monster, which must be destroyed at all costs. And remember how Odyssey defeats him. He pokes his eye out with a red-hot stake. Cruelty breeds cruelty. But the scariest thing happens afterwards, when they already escaped and sailed away. And children, in a fit of adrenaline rage, starts yelling Cyclops his real name. Tease him giving out his position, even though the team is begging him to shut up. This is typical human behavior, hooked on risk, who can no longer live without mortal danger. Scylla and Charybdis is a constant expectation of death, which comes by chance. Scylla is a six-headed monster, just grabs from Deck 6 best mates Odyssey, and devours them. And Odyssey stands next to him in armor with a spear, but he can't do anything. He's just watching the way they scream his name at the last. That's survivor guilt, which will haunt him for the rest of his days. Why them and not me? Even descent into the realm of the dead. It's not a physical journey underground. This is a dive into depression and nightmares. And Odyssey meets their shadows of her dead friends. Achilles of Ajax. Achilles is the greatest hero. Tells him a scary thing. Better be a living bodwreck at the poor man than a king among. Dead is a complete disappointment in the ideals of war. All glory, all feats are not worth one breath. And now, after 10 years of wandering, Odyssey returns to Ithaca, happy and no. He comes to his house as a stranger. He's dressed in beggar rags. He's hiding his face. No one will know him. Neither wife Penelope, neither son of Delilah, growing up without a father. The only one who recognizes the owner. This is an old dog Argus, who waited 20 years for him, wags his tail and immediately dies. It's a heart-breaking symbol. That part of life which he left died. He is no longer in that world. The final of the poem is not a family reunion, a bloodbath. In the house feasting suitors, arrogant young mages, who did not smell gunpowder, and the children lock the doors of the hall and begin methodically cold kill them. He shoots a bow, chopping with a sword, flooding the floors of his home with blood. This is not justice. This is a breakdown soldier brought the war home. He turned his cozy hall into a battlefield under Troy, because it's the only place. Where does he know how to exist? He kills them all, even maids who slept with enemies. That's a scary portrait of a person who came back from the war, but the war never came out of it. What is a Trojan horse? Wooden statue, siege tower, earthquake metaphor or symbol of human pride? Most likely we will never know the exact answer, and archaeologists will argue about this forever. But it does not matter. The important thing is that this story survived millennia. She survived the Dark Ages, when people forgot how to build palaces. She survived the fall of empires and the birth of new gods. She reminds us of that even the tallest walls can collapse from one push. Earth, that the global world is fragile and can crumble from one broken supply chain. And that war is not a parade of heroes in shining armor, a mud of blood and broken fates, which remain even then, when the last fires burn out. We started with that opened the hatch of a wooden horse. Now coming out of it, we see not just a burning ancient city, we see the mirror, which reflects our whole history. And maybe that's why 3,000 years later, we still remember Troy. Thank you for watching the Cipher history. Don't forget to like and subscribe, so we can keep decoding the secrets of history together. See you in the next mystery.